The crystalline towers of the Zetheri research vessel Luminous Seeker glinted against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. Commander Vorax Cathal stood at the observation deck, her iridescent scales shifting colors as she contemplated the vast emptiness before her. The ship's mission to catalog unexplored regions of space had been routine until now. "Commander, we're detecting an anomalous energy signature in Sector 7, reported First Officer Nexus, his neural tendrils pulsing with excitement. "It appears to be a vessel, but its configuration matches nothing in our database." Vorax's secondary hearts quickened. The Zetheri prided themselves on having the most comprehensive stellar cartography in known space. An unknown ship design could mean only one thing: first contact. "Show me," she commanded, her voice resonating with the harmonic undertones characteristic of her species. The holographic display materialized, revealing a small ship drifting through the void. Its design was peculiar, angular and utilitarian, lacking the organic flowing lines of Zetheri architecture. "Life signs?" she asked, already moving toward the command center. "1. Faint but stable. The vessel's life support systems are operating at minimal capacity." Vorax made her decision quickly. "Prepare the quantum tether. We're bringing them in." The rescue operation proceeded with typical Zetheri precision. The unknown vessel was carefully drawn into the Luminous Seeker's auxiliary bay, its hull showing signs of micrometeor impacts and radiation damage. Whatever this ship was, it had traveled far. When the airlock cycled open, Vorax led the first contact team personally. The alien vessel's design became even more puzzling up close. Where Zetheri ships were grown from living crystal, this craft was clearly assembled from manufactured parts. Primitive, yet somehow elegant in its functionality. They found the pilot unconscious but alive in the cockpit. The being was unlike anything Vorax had ever encountered. Bipedal, with soft pink skin and strange fibrous growth on its head. Its environmental suit was bulky and mechanical, nothing like the bioengineered suits of the Zetheri. The ship's computer systems were equally fascinating. Binary code, mechanical processors. The Zetheri had abandoned such technologies millennia ago in favor of quantum crystalline computing. Yet somehow, this vessel had managed interstellar travel. The alien was transferred to Medical Bay, where Chief Medical Officer Syra worked to stabilize its condition. "Remarkable biology," she reported, her scales shifting to the deep blue of scientific fascination. "Their cellular structure is entirely different from ours, yet there's an elegant efficiency to it. They appear to have natural regenerative capabilities we don't fully understand." Hours later, the alien regained consciousness. Its first action was to reach for a device at its belt, some kind of tool or weapon. Vorax raised her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "You're safe," she said, as the ship's universal translator attempted to process their languages. "We found your vessel damaged and brought you aboard." The alien's eyes widened. Such expressive organs. And it slowly relaxed its grip on the device. "Thank you," it said, the translator finally finding equivalencies between their languages. "I'm Sarah Chen, pilot of the Earth vessel Pathfinder." Earth. A new world, a new species. Vorax felt her scales ripple with excitement. "I am Commander Vorax Cathal of the Zetheri research vessel Luminous Seeker. What brought you so far from your territory?" Sarah smiled, such a strange movement of facial muscles, and said, "Curiosity. Humanity has always wanted to know what's over the next horizon. When we developed faster than light travel, those horizons just got a lot further away." Vorax was struck by the casual way this human spoke of such momentous technological achievement. "You developed FTL travel recently." "About 50 years ago. We're still new to it compared to many species we've met." 50 years. The Zetheri had taken centuries to perfect FTL travel, building carefully on established principles. These humans had somehow compressed that development into a fraction of the time. "Your ship," Vorax said carefully, "it's unlike anything we've encountered. The technology seems," she searched for a diplomatic word, "primitive. Sarah finished with another smile. We get that a lot. Humans tend to favor practical solutions over elegant ones. If it works, we use it, even if it's not the most advanced approach. Before Vorax could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the luminous seeker. Commander, Nexus's voice came through the ship's communication crystal. We're detecting massive gravitational disturbances. Some kind of space-time anomaly is forming directly in our path. Vorax rushed to the bridge, with Sarah following despite the medical officer's protests. The view ahead showed space itself beginning to twist and distort, creating patterns that shouldn't be possible in normal space-time. Can we plot a course around it? Vorax demanded. The anomaly is expanding too rapidly. Our quantum drives need time to calculate a safe jump point. Sarah studied the sensor readings with surprising comprehension. Those are similar to the distortions that damaged my ship, she said, but this is much bigger. Your technology is clearly more advanced than ours, but sometimes the simplest solution is the best. Want to know how I survived my encounter? Vorax looked at the human, seeing not a primitive alien but a survivor who had already faced this threat. In that moment, she made a decision that would change both their species forever. Tell me everything. The bridge of the luminous seeker hummed with nervous energy as Sarah Chen quickly sketched a diagram on the holographic display. The Zethari crew watched with a mixture of fascination and skepticism as her fingers danced through the crystalline interface, adapting remarkably quickly to their alien technology. The key isn't to fight the gravitational distortion, Sarah explained, her voice steady despite the growing chaos outside the ship. These anomalies feed on energy. The more you push against them with advanced tech, the stronger they become. Commander Vorax's scales shifted to a deep violet of concern. Our quantum drives are the most sophisticated in known space. Are you suggesting we power them down? Exactly, Sarah nodded. When I encountered a smaller version of this anomaly, I survived by going dark. Minimal power, passive systems only. These distortions are like predators. They chase energy signatures. First Officer Nexus's neural tendrils writhed in agitation. Commander, the human strategy is completely counter to all established protocols. The computational matrices suggest our best chance is to execute a precisely calculated quantum jump. The massive ship shuddered as another gravitational wave struck. Warning crystals pulsed throughout the bridge, their harmonics growing more discordant with each impact. Vorax watched as hairline fractures began appearing in the ship's living crystal hull, damage that shouldn't have been possible. Your computers are trying to solve this mathematically, Sarah said, pointing to the complex quantum calculations streaming across multiple displays. But some problems can't be solved with pure logic. Sometimes you have to feel your way through. Vorax looked at the human, then at her crew. The Zethari had achieved their dominance of known space through careful advancement of proven technologies. Their ships were grown, not built, combining organic and crystalline technologies into perfect harmony. The idea of shutting it all down went against every instinct. Another impact rocked the ship. Hull integrity at 60%, reported the engineering crystal, quantum matrix showing signs of destabilization. Commander, Sarah's voice was quiet but intense. Your ship is beautiful, advanced, perfect. But right now, all that perfection is making us a target. Trust me, sometimes the best way to survive is to be small, to be quiet, to let the storm pass over you. Vorax's scales rippled through a cascade of colors as she made her decision. Execute emergency shutdown. All systems except minimal life support to go dark in 3 minutes. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, despite their obvious discomfort with the strategy. Sarah worked alongside them, showing a surprising grasp of which systems could be safely deactivated and which needed to maintain minimal function. Quantum drives offline. Crystal matrix entering dormant state. Neural network disconnecting. Weapons systems powered down. One by one, the ship's systems went dark. The familiar hum of advanced technology faded to silence. The living crystal walls dimmed from their usual luminescent glow to a dull, lifeless gray. On the bridge, emergency lighting cast strange shadows as the crew watched their sophisticated instruments go blank. "Now what?" Nexus asked, his neural tendrils pulled close to his head in discomfort. Sarah had made her way to one of the few remaining active stations, a simple radiation detector. "Now we wait. And watch. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all." The minutes stretched into hours. The Zetheri crew, used to constant neural connection with their ship, found the silence almost painful. Sarah moved among them, teaching simple card games she carried in her suit's pocket, sharing stories of Earth, keeping morale up with a strange combination of humor and quiet confidence. "How can you be so calm?" Vorax asked during their 4th hour of darkness. "Your species is so young, so new to space, yet you face the unknown with such certainty." Sarah shuffled her worn deck of cards. "Humans learned early that the universe doesn't care about our plans or our technology. We survived on Earth by adapting, by learning to work with nature instead of always trying to control it. Sometimes the primitive solution is the right one." Suddenly, the remaining sensors registered a change. The gravitational distortions were shifting, moving past them like a tide flowing around a rock. The anomaly, unable to detect the sophisticated energy signatures it seemed to feed on, was passing them by. "It's working," Nexus whispered, his tendrils beginning to unfurl. "The anomaly is moving away from our position." Sarah nodded, continuing to watch the simple radiation readings. "Let it go completely past. Don't rush to power up. That's how you survive storms. You wait until they're really gone, not just when you think they're gone." Another hour passed before Sarah finally nodded. "Okay, you can start bringing systems back online. Slowly, one at a time. Let's not ring the dinner bell if our friend is still in the neighborhood." As the luminous seeker gradually awakened from its artificial slumber, Vorax found herself studying the human with new appreciation. Her species had achieved incredible technological advancement, yet this encounter was teaching her that progress wasn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it was about knowing when to step back. "You've given us much to think about, Sarah Chen," Vorax said as the bridge returned to its normal operation. "Perhaps there are different kinds of advancement than what we've always assumed." Sarah smiled, returning her cards to their worn pack. "That's why humans explore, Commander. Not just to find new places, but to find new ways of thinking. Now want to help me figure out how to repair my ship? I've got some ideas that might surprise you." The Zetheri crew watched with growing interest as their commander and the human began discussing repair strategies. None of them realized yet that this was just the beginning of a partnership that would challenge everything both species thought they knew about the nature of progress itself. The repair bay of the luminous seeker buzzed with activity as Sarah Chen worked alongside the Zetheri engineers. Her small exploration vessel, now secured in the crystalline dock, was slowly being restored using an unlikely combination of advanced alien technology and human ingenuity. "Pass me that molecular bonder," Sarah called out from beneath her ship's hull. A young Zetheri engineer named Lyra handed her the sophisticated tool, neural tendrils pulsing with curiosity as she watched Sarah use it in ways its designers had never intended. "I still don't understand," Lyra said, her scales shifting to the green hue of puzzlement. "Why modify the quantum field generator to produce such a crude energy signature?" Sarah slid out from under the hull, wiping grease from her hands. "Because sometimes the best way to fix something isn't to make it perfect, but to make it work differently. The damage to my ship's systems isn't just physical. That anomaly changed some fundamental properties of the materials. We need to adapt, not just repair." The ship's alert system suddenly pulsed, its crystalline harmonics shifting to warning tones. Commander Vorax's voice echoed through the neural network. "All hands to battle stations. Unknown vessels approaching at high velocity." Sarah and Lyra rushed to the bridge, arriving just as the tactical display crystallized into focus. Three ships, their designs an aggressive mix of sharp angles and weapon ports, were closing fast on their position. Raiders, Nexus reported, his tendrils rigid with tension. Kraxan vessels. They must have detected us while we were recovering from the anomaly. Sarah studied the approaching ships. Kraxan. Pirates, Vorax explained, her scales darkening. They prey on ships in this sector, using stolen technology they barely understand. Normally, they wouldn't dare approach a Zetheri vessel, but our encounter with the anomaly has left us vulnerable. Our primary weapons array is still regenerating. The raiders' ships moved with predatory grace, spreading out to surround the luminous seeker. A harsh voice crackled through the communication crystal. Zetheri vessel, your defenses are compromised. Surrender your ship and crew. Resist, and we will show no mercy. Vorax's scales flushed with anger, but before she could respond, Sarah stepped forward. Commander, those ships, they're using a mix of technologies, right? Stolen from different species. Yes, the Kraxan are scavengers, not innovators. They combine whatever they steal without truly understanding it. A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. Then I have an idea, but you'll have to trust me again, and this time it's going to sound even crazier than powering down the ship. Vorax looked at the human, remembering how Sarah's unconventional thinking had saved them from the anomaly. Explain. Sarah quickly outlined her plan, using the holographic display to illustrate key points. The Zetheri crew's scales shifted through various colors of disbelief as they listened. That's impossible. Nexus protested. The quantum harmonics would never align properly. Exactly. Sarah grinned. But that's what makes it perfect. Commander, your ship's crystal technology is incredibly sophisticated. It's designed to work in perfect harmony. But what if we deliberately created discord? Vorax began to understand. The Kraxan ship's stolen systems would try to compensate in all the wrong ways. Sarah finished. Their mismatched technology would work against them. It's like playing music so badly it breaks all the windows. Another warning shot from the raiders rocked the ship. Your decision, Zetheri, the harsh voice demanded. Surrender or die. Vorax's scales rippled with determination. Begin modifications. Sarah, coordinate with engineering. Nexus, prepare the crystal matrix for deliberate desynchronization. The next few minutes were controlled chaos as the crew implemented Sarah's plan. The ship's living crystal structure protested as they forced it to produce discordant energies that went against its very nature. Sarah moved between stations, suggesting adjustments that made the Zetheri engineers wince. They're moving into final attack position, Nexus reported. Good, Sarah said, making a final adjustment. Let them get nice and close. Commander. Vorax nodded. Execute. The luminous Seeker's crystal matrix released a wave of deliberately chaotic energy. The quantum frequencies clashed and overlapped in ways that should never have been possible with Zetheri technology. The effect on the raider ships was immediate and devastating. Their stolen systems, already barely integrated, began fighting each other. Weapons arrays backfired. Shield generators overloaded. Navigation systems sent ships veering off course. The elegant but unnatural harmony of their stolen technology collapsed into cacophony. By the first crystal, Lyra whispered, watching the raiders' ships flail in space. It actually worked. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. Sometimes the best defense isn't a stronger shield, but making your enemy's strength work against them. They stole all that technology, but never learned its soul. The raider ships retreated in disarray, their once threatening formation now a scrambling rout. As the crew celebrated, Vorax approached Sarah. You taught us something important today, the commander said. The Zetheri have always believed that perfection is the highest goal. But you showed us that imperfection, properly applied, can be its own kind of strength. Sarah watched the retreating raiders on the tactical display. Humans learned long ago that there's rarely a perfect solution to any problem, but there's almost always a creative one. The bridge hummed with new energy as the crew began restoring the ship's systems to their normal, harmonious state. But something had changed in the way they worked. Where before they sought only perfection, now they began to see new possibilities in the spaces between order and chaos. The Zetheri were starting to understand why humans had achieved so much in so little time. Sometimes the greatest innovations came not from pushing technology to new heights, but from daring to use it in ways no one had ever imagined. The victory over the Kraxan raiders had barely been celebrated when the luminous seeker encountered something far more threatening. The ship's long-range sensors detected a massive gravitational disturbance, one that dwarfed the anomaly they had previously escaped. "It's a collapse point," Nexus announced, his neural tendrils writhing in distress. "The space-time fabric is unraveling. If it continues expanding at this rate, it will consume this entire sector within days." Sarah studied the sensor readings, her expression grim. The phenomenon ahead of them was like a cosmic cancer, eating away at the very structure of space. "Have you encountered anything like this before?" "Never," Vorax replied, her scales a deep shade of worry. "Our records show no precedent for space-time degradation on this scale." The tactical display showed the growing void, a region where the laws of physics themselves were breaking down. What made it worse was the realization that they weren't the only ones in danger. The collapse point was expanding towards several inhabited systems. "We have to stop it," Sarah said, her voice firm. "How long until it reaches the nearest populated world?" Lyra, working at the sensor station, calculated quickly. 48 hours at current expansion rates. The Kilari system. Population 3 billion. Sarah watched as the Zetheri crew initiated their standard response protocols. Quantum computers analyzed the phenomenon. Complex simulations ran through possible solutions, yet every projection showed the same result. Nothing in their advanced arsenal could stop the collapse. "Your ship," Sarah said suddenly. "You said it's grown, not built. It's alive in some way." "Yes," Vorax confirmed. "The crystal matrix has a form of consciousness. It's how we achieve such perfect harmony in our systems." Sarah began pacing, a habit the crew had learned meant she was processing an idea. "On Earth, we have something called a living firebreak, a barrier of plants that can help stop wildfires. What if we could create something similar in space?" Nexus's tendrils curled in confusion. "The void isn't fire. It's the fundamental breakdown of space-time itself." "But it's following patterns," Sarah insisted. "Look at the sensor readings. The collapse spreads along lines of gravitational stress, like water following cracks in rock. What if we could grow something to reinforce those stress points?" Vorax's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. "The crystal matrix can be induced to reproduce, to grow new structures. But we've never attempted anything on this scale." "We don't have to stop it completely," Sarah explained, growing more animated. "We just need to redirect it, like channeling a river. Your crystal technology is partially organic. Could it adapt, evolve in response to the void?" The next hours were a blur of frantic activity. The Zetheri engineers, guided by Sarah's unconventional insights, began modifying their ship's crystal-growing chambers. They weren't trying to create perfect structures anymore. They were deliberately introducing controlled mutations, allowing the crystals to develop in chaotic but resilient patterns. "It's working," Lyra reported, watching the first test samples. "The new crystal structures are showing resistance to the space-time degradation. But we'd need massive quantities to create an effective barrier." "Then we'll give it what it needs to grow," Sarah said. She had been studying the ship's biological systems. "Your crystal matrix feeds on energy, right? What if we gave it the biggest meal of its life?" The plan that emerged was audacious to the point of insanity. They would position the luminous seeker at the edge of the collapse point and trigger a controlled overload of its quantum core. The energy release would feed the modified crystals, causing them to grow explosively along the gravitational stress lines. "This is madness," Nexus protested. "The ship wasn't designed to channel that much power. A crystal matrix could shatter." "Sometimes you have to break something to make it stronger," Sarah replied. like a bone that heals stronger at the break point. We're not just trying to grow crystals, we're trying to evolve them. As they made their final preparations, Vorax pulled Sarah aside. The energy discharge will overload all our systems. If this fails, we won't survive. Sarah nodded solemnly. On Earth, there's an old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When failure means extinction, you'd be amazed what becomes possible. The luminous seeker moved into position, its crystal hull already beginning to pulse with unprecedented energy levels. The crew worked frantically to modify systems that were never meant to operate this way. They weren't following any manual now. They were writing a new one with every passing moment. Crystal matrix at 200% capacity. Lyra reported, her scales flickering with stress. Structure showing signs of quantum instability. Push it higher, Sarah urged. The crystals need to learn to adapt, to survive conditions they were never meant to face. The ship groaned as its living crystal structure was forced to evolve at an accelerated rate. New growth patterns emerged, spreading out from the hull like frozen lightning. Where they touched the edges of the collapse point, they didn't shatter. They transformed, creating structures that somehow existed in both normal space and the chaos of the void. Matrix at 300% capacity, Nexus called out. Crystal growth accelerating exponentially. The view through the ship's sensors was extraordinary. The modified crystals were spreading along the gravitational stress lines, creating a living network that bent and flexed with the forces trying to tear space apart. Where the void touched the crystal barrier, it was forced to flow around it, like water diverted by a dam. It's working. Vorax breathed, her scales shimmering with awe. The collapse point is being redirected. The next hours were tense as they monitored the growing crystal network. The void fought against its new constraints, but the evolved crystals adapted with each attack, learning and growing stronger. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the sensors confirmed what they hoped. The collapse point's expansion had been contained. As the crew began assessing the damage to their ship, Sarah watched the crystalline barrier glowing against the backdrop of stars. "You know what we just did?" she asked Vorax. "We didn't just save those systems. We proved that evolution can outpace entropy. Life finds a way, even in the void between stars." The commander's scales rippled with new colors, ones that had no name in Zetheri language. They had achieved something unprecedented, not through perfect technology, but through the messy, desperate, beautiful process of adaptation and growth. The luminous seeker would need extensive repairs, but it had changed in ways that went far beyond physical damage. Like its crew, the ship had learned that true advancements sometimes meant embracing chaos rather than fighting it. In forcing their technology to evolve, they had evolved themselves. In the aftermath of their victory over the collapse point, the luminous seeker limped toward the nearest Zetheri outpost. The ship's crystal matrix had been fundamentally altered by their desperate gambit, its structures now showing patterns never before seen in Zetheri technology. But it wasn't just the ship that had changed. The crew gathered in the observation dome, watching the newly formed crystal barrier shimmer in space behind them. Its network of evolved structures stood as a testament to what they had achieved by combining two very different approaches to survival. "The Council will want a full report," Nexus said, his neural tendrils moving in complex patterns that reflected his mixed emotions. "How do we explain what we did? It violates every principle of crystal engineering." Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, making notes in her battered tablet. She had been documenting everything, knowing that this encounter would be just as significant for humanity as it was for the Zetheri. Tell them the truth. Tell them that perfection isn't always the answer. Vorax's scales shifted through thoughtful colors as she considered this. The past few days had challenged everything she thought she knew about progress and technology. Her people had spent millennia refining their crystal technology, always striving for greater precision and control. Yet it was controlled chaos that had saved them. "The barrier is still growing," Lyra reported from her station. "But not like before. It's adapting. Each new crystal formation is slightly different, responding to local conditions in space. It's evolving on its own. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. That's what living things do. Even your crystalline technology is partly alive, isn't it? Maybe it was always capable of this kind of adaptation. It just needed permission to be imperfect. The young engineer who had been working with Sarah approached, holding a small crystal formation in her hands. We've been studying the new growth patterns, the quantum irregularities we introduced. They've created possibilities we never imagined. The crystals aren't just surviving in chaos, they're thriving in it. This sparked an intense discussion among the crew. The Zetheri had always seen technology as something to be controlled, refined, perfected. The idea that allowing it to develop chaotically could lead to advancement was revolutionary. My people will have trouble accepting this, Vorax admitted. We've built our entire civilization on the pursuit of perfection. Sarah stood up, walking to the viewing window. Humans had to learn this lesson too, you know. We used to think we could control everything through technology, bend nature to our will. But our greatest breakthroughs often came when we learned to work with nature instead of against it. She gestured to the crystal barrier. Look at what we achieved, not by imposing order on chaos, but by giving chaos the tools to organize itself. That's how evolution works: trial and error, adaptation, finding new solutions to impossible problems. The ship's sensors chimed, indicating they were approaching the outpost. Soon, they would have to explain to the Zetheri authorities exactly what had happened. But something else was becoming clear to the crew. This encounter had implications far beyond saving a few star systems. We need to formalize an alliance, Vorax said suddenly, between humans and Zethari, not just for technology exchange, but for perspective exchange. Your people see possibilities where we see problems. We see patterns where you see chaos. Together we could reshape the galaxy, Sarah finished, not by conquering it or controlling it, but by helping it evolve. The crew spent their final hours together documenting everything they had learned. The Zetheri engineers worked alongside Sarah, combining their precise mathematical models with her intuitive understanding of adaptation and growth. They were creating something new, a hybrid science that respected both order and chaos. As they prepared to dock with the outpost, Vorax found Sarah in the repair bay, making final adjustments to her small exploration vessel. The human simple ship had been upgraded with modified Zetheri technology, though not in any way the designers had intended. "What will you tell your people?" Vorax asked. Sarah smiled, running her hand along the crystalline growths that now merged seamlessly with her ship's hull. "I'll tell them we're not alone in the universe, and that's the best news we could hope for. Not because we found beings more advanced than us, but because we found beings different from us. In those differences lie infinite possibilities." The commander's scales rippled with new colors. Hope, excitement, uncertainty all blended together. The Zetheri have always believed that advancement meant moving in a straight line toward perfection. You've shown us that real progress spirals outward, embracing new possibilities. And you've shown me that sometimes you need perfect order before you can create useful chaos, Sarah replied. Humans rush forward, trying everything, learning from our failures. The Zetheri build careful foundations that can support incredible achievements. Imagine what we could accomplish together. As the luminous seeker docked with the outpost, its crew knew they were carrying more than just reports of an averted disaster. They were carrying the seeds of a new understanding, that true advancement comes not from pursuing perfection, but from embracing the creative potential of imperfection. The crystal barrier they had created would stand as a monument to this truth, evolving and adapting to protect countless worlds. But the real monument would be the change in both their civilizations, as they learned to see the universe through each other's eyes. The human and the Zetheri had rewritten the rules of progress itself, proving that the greatest achievements come not from following established paths, but from daring to forge new ones. In doing so, They had taken the first steps toward a future neither species could have imagined alone.